Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the Be the Difference podcast. If you are, I got a huge favor to ask. Go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for us. It helps us immensely with algorithms and growth because we grow completely by word of mouth, organically. That's why there are no ads. Also, feel free to share this content with somebody you think might get value out of it. Last, if you don't know, I also do coaching to help people become the best version of themselves, starting with physical fitness, going all the way through mindset, sales, and leadership. If you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a link in the description of the podcast. You can schedule a time. It's a free assessment. All I'm going to do is have a conversation with you and see if I can even help you. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Continue to enjoy the podcast, and remember to always be the difference. What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Chris Hood. Chris, how are you, sir?
I am awesome. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure, Chris. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about this podcast. And for those of you that don't know who Chris is, he is an internationally recognized voice thought leader and digital strategist with over 35 years of experience in online entertainment and marketing for TV, film, music, and video games. Today, he hosts the Chris Hood Digital Show and works with companies worldwide to develop digital strategies. Previously, Chris worked as the head of business innovation and strategy for Google, where he engaged with Fortune 500 companies to create digital transformation programs and build cultures of innovation. While at Google, he launched and hosted the weekly business podcast, That Digital Show. Chris, Chris also worked as a director for Fox Broadcasting, where he developed storytelling technologies and innovated new mechanisms for viewers to engage with television content for shows like Glee, Gotham, Sleepy Hollow, The X Factor, and American Idol. His work included developing TV Everywhere products and interactive media platforms for streaming services. In his spare time, Chris teaches in the Business and Information Technology departments at Southern New Hampshire University and Colorado Technical University. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Hood. I like it. That's a fantastic repertoire of experience that you have.
There's a lot in there, isn't there?
There's a lot. There's a lot. I like it. So, I love when I love talking to people that are thought leaders. So I kind of want to dig in on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds great.
So talk a little bit about how you developed your leadership style and how you jumped into that realm.
Well, I mean, it's one of these conversations that a lot of people have, the difference between managers and leaders, right?
Mhm.
All the way back to one of my first jobs. I was working in retail. I was a sales associate, and it was not long. The glory of retail is that there's very high turnover, and every month you're basically promoting somebody. So I got promoted fairly quickly into a leadership role, a store manager type of position. And from there, I spent a lot of time going back and forth through different types of, whether it was retail or I talk a lot about working at a movie theater and managing staff, and thinking about the ways that we want to present customer service to people. And I studied a lot around like Walt Disney and his philosophies of customer service and tried to apply some of those thoughts to my leadership style. Like, customer is always first, period. And how do you represent that? How do you position that? And then how do you work backwards to your teams so that they also embrace the same philosophies? And then how do you work with those teams to help lead towards a customer first process?
Mm.
A lot of that I've been able to carry with me throughout my career. And as I've moved up the ranks, or I've had various types of professional leadership roles, managing different sizes of teams and different types of capacities of teams, I've always tried to maintain that one central premise. Whether it's a technology company, whether it's a B2B company, whether it's some random marketing type of service, your customer always has to come first. And if we think about it in that context, always, then we can figure out all the other things like how do we deliver that and how do we build our teams and structure our organization around that? How do we build cultures to support innovation? A lot of the topics that I've been talking about recently, it still ultimately all goes back to maintaining a leadership perspective that presents the customers first. And that's what I've always focused on.
How would you how would you very simply for the audience define or compare and contrast a manager versus a leader?
There's more than enough materials out there in the world that explain it better than I can. If we were to oversimplify it, I think most people look at managing as, somebody who is actually directing people what to do,
Mhm.
whereas leaders tend to be forward focused and lead by example. Servitude is a word that often comes up.
Yep.
What can I do for you? And I think that approach applies again with my team. If you're on my team, what can I do for you to help you be successful, while at the same time, what can I do for my customers, because ultimately I want my customers to be successful in whatever their challenges, problems, needs are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I like to say that managers focus on performance, on the numbers, on the data, and leaders focus on potential and taking people and raising them to another higher level, right? And helping them to become a better version of themselves. A lot of that is through that service. A lot of that is through leading by example, by doing it themselves. Right.
There's not to say that you can't focus on performance
No, no, you can't.
KPIs as a
Yeah.
leader. It's the it's the
It's a very
emphasis.
oversimplified.
Right. Well, but it's
So
the emphasis that you have on that performance.
yeah.
So I could argue like you're not meeting your sales number. That's a
Mhm.
manager versus how can I help you meet those sales numbers that we have, right?
Yeah.
It's all contextual. You still have a goal that you're trying to reach, but it's in how you're executing and emphasizing the specific needs of your employees or your
Mhm.
team members to accomplish it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't and like also by the way, for the audience, it's not that being a manager is a bad thing. It's not that an organization shouldn't have managers. They should, right? The way it's almost like the art and the science between it, where leadership's more of an art and management's more of a science. It's just it's you're going to have both halves of the same coin within an organization, and sometimes you're going to have the same coin within the same person, depending upon the situation, right? It's all contextual and dependent upon what the circumstances are. So I love talking about leadership also. So as you can probably tell, um, don't ever think, and I don't want to put like a negative spin on managers because they're needed within an organization and management styles are needed. I think where the problem is that you'll have organizations that are very management heavy, or you'll have teams or sections where there's not a lot of leadership. People aren't trying to be service minded. They're not trying to raise people to the next level. And really, they're just trying to focus on let's just hit numbers. Go, 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 go. Like drive, drive, drive. And that's when you'll start to see people will get burnt out. You'll start to see that people will quit, quit projects, quit teams, quit organizations, and um, you'll see that you'll have the culture will start to go negative to a negative place when you have a lack of leadership and it's just all management. So if if you've noticed anything like that within any organization that you've worked with.
Oh yeah, a whole bunch. I mean, I would argue, and I don't have stats, but I'm sure again, there's probably stats out there. I would argue that organizations that are management heavy have probably the most toxic cultures of any business.
Mhm.
That's a bold statement to make, but I think to your point, you have to have a good balance. You have to have people who are driving the operational challenges that you're faced with, while at the same time having individuals who can facilitate the strategic and vision of the organization and bring people along for that ride. And if you look at organizations that are, we have to hit our numbers, you are not performing and are basically driving that type of culture. The culture does have a decline in morale, in safety. We get the corporate politics that start to come into that culture. I mean, anytime there's corporate politics, like, oh, I have to do this. If I don't do that, then I'm going to get, let go, or, somebody's trying to take my job, or, I'm not going to work with that person because they're just going to backstab me, or they're going to take my idea and use it for their own ideas so that they can get credit, so that they can get promoted. All these concepts are not anything new, I'm sure, for anybody who's listening. And at the root, they are driven by the culture of that organization. And
Yeah,
if it is solely about performance and management and hitting those numbers and staying on task, then you're going to be challenged. You have to be able to bring in elements like psychological safety and acceptance and team participation. And they all sound like cliches and catchphrases for good leadership. But we've seen it time and time again that when you do those and you have people who are servitude towards your teams and cultures, those organizations are going to be more successful.
absolutely. Absolutely. I like that you use the term psychological safety, because a lot of people don't think about that, and that's really what a good culture and climate actually increases the psychological safety within the employees within, right? And as so you have culture and climate. Culture is kind of like what this is what the leadership says, this is what the organization top says, like this is what we believe in, right? And then you have the climate, which is like this is what the people actually see, this is what the organization, the all the individuals within see within culture and climate, and we'll say, hey, they say that they believe in this, and if there's a chasm or a difference between what the organization says and what they actually do, then that creates that psychological break in. And so when you have the culture and climate are aligned, where we do what we say we're going to do, and this is what we believe in, and this is how we act, and they actually act in accordance, then you create that psychological safety, right? And within individuals. And so, and I think that's also a crux of leadership, right? Where it's like you got to do the things that you say you're going to do. When you set like, hey, this is what the organization believes in, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we believe in interacting with each other. This is how we're going to do it. And then the leadership, if the leadership they don't do those things, right? They don't abide by those rules. Well, then you're going to have that chasm created, and then the psychological fear and angst is going to start increasing within those individuals, because we're like, it's like, hey man, one of these things, like they're saying that, but this ain't at all what it is, like not at my level, not what from what I see, right? And so that's where you had to put in the feedback mechanisms and the ways for them to actually voice their opinions, so that you can actually see like, hey, what do you guys see? Does it seem like we're actually is the culture and the climate the same? Are we doing the right things, right? So, but I love those terms, psychological safety, because not a lot of people use that, and it's super important.
Yeah, I have a great example of what you just talked about. I went into a meeting with a very large organization, very well known,
Mhm,
international organization, and around the table was pretty much every VP within the organization and several of the C-level executives. And we went through a round of different types of topics and conversations, and I was hearing what people were saying, but at the root I still felt like there was a disconnect somewhere. And so I asked a very basic question. I said, how would you define the culture within your organization? And pretty much everyone around the room said, the culture is great. I love working here. Everything is perfect. But their words, which were everything is great and everything is perfect and the culture is awesome, was not aligning with what they were actually saying was the challenges and problems within their organization.
yeah,
And they were unable to really admit it. Now, I don't know if that's because there were C-level executives in there and they just wanted to be like, yeah, everything is fine. And if they would have had a different response if you took them behind closed doors and actually asked them, confidentially. But it goes to your point. Like, there's a perception of what's a good culture, and then there is the reality of what the culture really is.
mhm,
And sometimes that will come out whether you actually are talking about the culture or not. And that safety that we're talking about helps you to be able to have genuine and legitimate conversations.
mhm,
And if the culture was really challenging, anybody at that table should have been able to say, hey, I enjoy working here, but we have substantial challenges within our culture because we can't accomplish this or this or this. But clearly, that feeling of safety around the room was not there. And so everything is fine. And you just know it's not.
yeah, absolutely. That's a good point that it'll prevent people from actually coming up and speaking, especially when you get when the psychological fear level has risen to a point um, where individuals don't feel like the leadership will even listen, or they're afraid to even say it near
Right.
them. That's when the levels, the organization toxicity has gotten to a level that like you're gonna have to do a whole rehaul, almost of like leadership, the culture, setting core values, redoing things. It's gonna be very difficult to regain people's trust at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though they haven't admitted it, it's like the trust is gone.
Yeah. And for all these organizations out there that are talking about things like digital transformation or being able to transform to meet the needs of their customers,
Mm,
which is what I started with, they are challenged because the culture is preventing that transformation from happening.
yeah,
It's not all about the technology. It's not like, hey, we're going to change this technology and it's going to fix everything. That technology change isn't necessarily even a band aid for the problem. The problem is the culture. Doesn't matter what technology you throw at it or what changes to the stack that you make to digitally transform, we'll say, you've got to start at that cultural level and start to break through those perceptions that you have in order to be able to transform in the first place.
yep, absolutely, absolutely. I love talking about leadership. So when somebody has their psychological safety um, start to lower, when leadership notices it, what are some ways that you've been able to that's things that you've learned, experiences that you've had, maybe strategies that you've applied that can help a leadership team get back on the right track?
Yeah, one, it starts at the top and goes down. I mean, you could argue that this starts from the ground and works its way up as well, but often you're going to hit a barrier. So let's just say I am a manager and I am trying to implement some new, strategies to help build teamwork and collaboration. and then I move up, and then maybe my manager says okay, and but then I get to some director level and they're like, no, we still have this we have to accomplish, and we don't have time for whatever these new initiatives are. So I think in a typical organizational structure from bottom up, you will still encounter some plateau, which is going to challenge the norms or the attempts to kind of break through those norms.
Mm.
And if you go from the top down, then you're making a statement. I'll give you a good example, and we'll get back to psychological safety. But if I was to ask you, what type of business is Domino's Pizza? And that's a direct question. What do
Okay,
you think?
so
Domino's Pizza, what kind
it's
of
not gonna
business
be
are
it's
they?
not gonna be pizza. It'll be like happiness, or it'll be like they sell happiness, or they sell connection, or family gatherings. You know,
You're on the right track.
yeah.
So they consider themselves a technology company. So
Okay.
they're not a food company. They're not a retail service. They're not a pizza company. They sell pizzas, but they actually consider themselves a technology company. Now, how did this happen? Well, their CEO came out 5, 6 years ago now and said, we are a technology company, because they realized that if we create the right types of technologies, we'll be able to sell more pizzas. And
Mm,
at that time, they were about the number of three or four most, the largest pizza companies in the world. They went from like the number three spot up to the number one spot in the world because they shifted their mindset. They shifted the focus of the business. But that initiative, that mandate came from the CEO. This is what we are going to do. And then it flowed down. It took them a couple of years for that to flow down and fully transform. But there is no way that that was going to come from the bottom up. And you can see countless examples of how a transformation is initiated by the CEO,
mm,
because that's where it has to come from. It has to be a mandate. It has to be a change in vision. It has to be a change in whatever the primary mission is. And maybe it's not a complete mission statement change, but it's a change that is going to influence or improve whatever that mission is. And then as it starts to work down from that top perspective, then you can get into how are we actually going to do this?
mm,
And so when we think about like psychological safety, the primary benefit of this is to say everybody on my team has a voice. Everybody on my team can come forward with ideas. And those ideas are what's going to help us be better. It's not like, oh yeah, Tony over there has another crazy idea, crazy Tony's idea,
yeah.
or uh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't have time to listen to this right now. Like even those things breaks our feelings that we are being heard or understood, or that our opinions matter, or what place do I have in this organization? I think beyond psychological safety, the number one challenge that pretty much we all have is when we come into work on a day to day basis, not just do I want to go into work? I got to go into work again. I don't want to be there. But what am I doing?
Yeah. What's the purpose?
What's the purpose of me being here? And if you can't directly say that here's my job and here's my daily task and this is what I know is contributing to the overall organization, then you're
Contribution is a
going to,
big thing.
yeah, you're going to challenge it.
Yeah. Yeah, contribution is a big thing. Understanding that what you're doing feeds into a greater whole, and that means from the leadership they have to be almost evangelical about this is what we're doing. Like this is the vision of the company. This is what we're taking, and all of you are part of it. And this is how it all feeds together, and really painting the picture, and so that everyone can understand how they're playing into a vital role. It also is very reminiscent of like the start with why theory, Simon Sinek, like making sure like, hey, this is why we do what we do. This is how we do it, and this is what we're actually doing, right? So, like, hey, we believe in creating technology that's going to change the fast food landscape. You know, we're going to do it by creating uh, um, these easy to use platforms for people that can purchase quicker, and they can also track where their food is at in the process. We just also happen to sell pizzas.
Yeah,
like boom, there it is. And
that's it.
thinking about it, I should have guessed technology company because that's true. They did create all that. I remember they created all that stuff. I didn't know they went to a first spot, but I mean, I'm not surprised.
But here's
I kind
what's
of want a pizza
amazing
now.
about that. Here, the I've shared that story with, I can't tell you how many executives, CEOs, CIOs, CFO, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
I've probably shared that with 30 or 40 CEOs. And I've been in meetings asking the exact same question. What type of business is Domino's? And typical type of response, retail, food, services, whatever. And then you lay the punchline, no, they're a technology company, and you rattle off some other things. Almost half, easily half of the CEOs, C-level executives I've shared this story with say, as their response, yes, but we're not Domino's.
You missed the
And
point, bro.
I go, you missed the entire
You
point.
missed the point. That's like it's like McDonald's is a real estate company.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The famous story behind McDonald's and the founder movie that really paints that picture.
yeah,
You're in the real estate business. You're not fast food.
yeah,
It's all perception and positioning and messaging. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that you're still serving people, whether those people are your employees, partners, customers. And to be able to serve those people properly to reach whatever that mission is, that's the critical piece.
yeah. And what's crazy about all this is that I created my company and an umbrella, a company under an umbrella, right? That's a technology company that helps insurance, right? Helps provide I mean, they sell insurance, but they also have insurance products. So my parent company is Quility, and so when I sat down with Quility for the first time, the first thing they told me is like, we're a leadership company. We just happen to sell insurance. And I was like, "That's exactly what I'm looking for, right?" Like, that's it. And everything the conversation was so much more powerful because they were just from the beginning, they talked about their vision and, like, what they were trying to build and what they were doing, and so, um, it wasn't like, "Hey, we sell insurance. We sell the most insurance. Insurance, insurance, insurance. Like, we can help you." It was like they were like, "Hey, we have a vision for the future, and we are a leadership company. We just happen to also sell insurance." Right? We care about making people the best version of themselves and helping them in every area of their life. Because when people are increase every area of their life, they also happen to increase their professional side and their business and their insurance. They sell more, they're happier, they're healthier, they make more money. Right. And so they really went on in the leadership. And that was exactly kind of the focus that I was looking at when I wanted to create my company. And that's why I partnered with them. And so, like, looking at for me, I'm like a personal development company. Like, I care about per, people with agents that have come on or that join the team. I'm very big on personal development and helping them to reach new heights. So, like, it's kind of nested still within the overall quality process of being a leadership company, but I'm very heavy on, hey, we're a personal development company. We just also happen to sell life insurance. So, and that's kind of been my focus. So I'm picking up exactly what you're putting down, Chris. So,
Good.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that so many CEOs that there's such a large percentage that just miss the mark after you explain it to them that it doesn't like click within them and like to get the wheels turning to where they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, and then start looking at their business through a different lens and being like, hey, what can we actually focus on that can push the product more, but really uniting vision for the entire team so that they can
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're going for to the future."
Yeah, what's amazing is another story came to mind, and this will blow you away as well. It's really amazing different perspectives that you have when you're talking with leaders or C level, and and a lot of times I just shake my head and question, like, how did this individual get into that position? But in this particular case, I was having a conversation about business growth and how do you look at your business and how do you consider growing it, and the word transformation comes back into mind. And we're talking about different types of digital strategies in order to implement and be able to, again, successfully grow your business. This executive turns to me on the phone. There's 30 people on this call, all from his team, and he says, "Oh, we're not in the business to grow. We are not trying to grow our business. All we care about is being able to sustain our business. And as long as we can keep our business exactly where it's at, we're happy." And I was blown away by this. Like, I'm thinking, you're an executive who just told like half of your team, like, you're not in the business to grow or to even think strategically like that. And the only thing I could say to counter was, look, even if you want to sustain your business at the status quo that you're at today, you're still going to have to understand how to transform the business,
Mhm.
because all of your customers and society and everybody around you is transforming.
Yeah.
So you either have to decide to keep up with that in order to maintain your business where it's at today, or eventually at some point in time, you are going to go out of business.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it's unfortunate. Here's the thing is that you can't even without trying to think of how to word this the best way. There's no way for you to just maintain without changing, right? And there's no way to know the level of change that's required in order to maintain. So you're going to have to change regardless. You're going to have to keep up, because there's always going to be fall off. In any business, with any product, with any service, you're going to have fall off with over time with your clientele. And if you're not changing and adapting in order to keep up with, you might as well get some growth out of it, right? Like, instead of just being like, oh, we're just going to change this a little bit, it's going to hopefully be just enough to where we can maintain. Why don't you change enough to make sure that you're guaranteeing growth? Even if it's a 5% every year, 10% doesn't matter, as long as you're getting growth. Because it's nearly impossible to be able to determine, what level of
Yeah.
change do we require in order to maintain. You can't, it's not, I can't think of any way that you could like forecast that, right?
Well, there are ways that you can, but it goes back to what we've been talking about this whole time, and
Yeah.
what a culture of an organization looks like. Because here's another term that people use all the time, which is a problem, which is, well, that's not how we do things,
Mhm.
or we've always done it this way, right? And the number of people who say, well, we've always done it this way, that infects the culture, and it prevents that change from happening, because their mindset is so focused on, this is how we do it. And what we see as a constant change, as I've said, we know a couple of things. No matter what, technology is going to continue to evolve, and people are going to continue to get older and die. That's Those are constants in the world right now,
Yep.
no matter what. So if you understand those two premise, that technology is going to continue to change, and that your customer base is naturally, because that's what happens, life is naturally also going to change, you have to figure out what you can do as an organization to maintain that.
Yeah.
So banks are a great example. And I've had this conversation with a lot of banks. We have the concept of a bank branch, where you literally drive to a location to perform banking transactions. Banking branches are going out of business. Why? Well, because the technology is allowing us to do it from home, and our customer bases, people, are getting older. And so A great example of this is my mom. She's in her 70s. She will still want to go to a bank branch.
Mhm.
That's because that is all she's ever really done. In contrast, my son, who's 15, he's never stepped foot into a bank branch and he doesn't even know what they're for. But he knows how to pick up a mobile device. He knows how to scan a check. He knows how to deposit a check using his phone.
Mhm.
And that's a great example of how we as a world is transforming on a daily basis, and organizations have to get behind that mindset to be able to keep up with that or even maintain that.
Absolutely. And that's a good way to put it. It's a great example to portray it for anyone that's any of the audience listening that's a small business owner or you're looking to start a small business. Thinking about those contacts will help to keep you ahead of the power curve as you want to develop your business and grow it for sustained growth within the future. Is making sure that that's you keep those key points in mind. So you had mentioned talking to and sitting with I guess coaching or maybe consulting with C-suite executives. Is that something that you do as a coach or consultant?
Yeah, it's something that I've been doing for a while,
Okay.
but yeah, it's really just sitting down and helping. There's two primary things that I try to do. One, let's figure out what a digital strategy is going to be for you, and what are some of your business challenges, what are some of the things that you would like to achieve.
Mhm.
Let's talk through that. And the other is, how do we shift your mindset, right? How do we shift your way of thinking from, hey, we've got this thing that we want to produce inside of our organization, or we've got this new idea, or we've got a team that we were trying to, form, or whatever that mindset is, to a different kind of mindset.
Mhm.
And oftentimes executives have the right mindset, so we don't have to spend a lot of time in that area, but a lot of times, they're thinking, well, I just want to maintain the status quo. And in my head, I'm thinking, there's nothing I can do about this. You're stuck in your mindset, like, thanks,
Yeah.
good luck. So
Yeah, and that's I mean that's an important piece when it comes to coaching or doing consultation services. Is you've got to pick the right clientele that are actually going to apply the things and listen. Uh, you know that you're helping them with, right? Because if you're giving them feedback, guidance, coaching tips, strategies, and they don't apply it, then they're kind of a walking representation. If they're especially if they're not doing it, they're failing. They're like a walking representation of your service, right? That's like, dude, I can't help you. Good luck.
yeah, I
So,
mean, as long as I leave and I feel like we've reached some sort of aha moment,
yeah,
I mean, that's the best thing is have this conversation. You might struggle with some of the concepts, or you might struggle with wrapping your head around, what you should do or shouldn't do. But if I can leave you with one kind of nugget where you're like, I get it.
mhm,
The execution from there can take any number of forms, but you have to, again, it's so critical just to have the right mindset around this. You know, another area, just to give you a quick example, another area of this that is very interesting is we talk about cultures and we talk about how to build cultures. Well, a lot of times building the right culture also starts with who you hire. Just like you were saying, in terms of picking the right clients that are going to, be successful, you've got to be able to hire the right people and
yep,
bring in the people that are going to fit within your culture.
yep,
And so I talk a lot about, there's these concepts around biased hiring practices or unbiased hiring practices. And we don't have to really get into a lot of that, but you know, I get people all the time saying, "Oh, well, we can't do that because we're desperate for this position, or we really have to fill this role now." So you end up just hiring anybody, or you end up hiring somebody, or a referral, or you get back into the politics and it's like, well, I'm going to hire the person I want to hire, whether
Yep.
they're the right fit or not, because I owe you a favor. And then there's favoritism and, everything else that goes with it. All you're doing is contributing to your failed culture.
Yep.
And these are challenges. And you'll see a lot when you're talking to executives about how do you shift your hiring practices. And they're just like, "Yeah, I can't do that. We can't do that." Well,
You
you
have to.
can
You
do
have
it.
to. Yeah.
You can do it. You're just choosing not to do it.
Yeah.
And that is a mindset shift that you have to make. And like you said, you ultimately have to do this or your business is going to struggle.
Mhm. It's so true. You have to hire and fire off of your core values. If you don't, it will affect the culture. This is a great example of you having core values, and you core values set the culture of your organization. And when you hire people that aren't fitting the core values, you're creating that bad climate that is separating from the culture. And then you're like, "Oh, I can't." No, you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to as a leader, and it sucks. And it's gonna be you're putting more challenge on yourself. But when you do that, man, you get through the hard knocks and the rough times. Your organization, it's addition through subtraction. Your organization starts to grow, and people start to perform better because they see that you mean what you say.
Yep.
It's so key. It's so key. Chris, thank you so much for jumping on and just having a good leadership conversation with me and with the audience. If anyone listens to this and they're thinking, man, I want to learn more from Chris or follow him, what's the best place to connect with you at?
The absolute best place is on my website. So you can reach me at chrishood.com, CHRISHOOD.com. And on my website, you'll have access to my blog, my podcast, all of my social media profiles,
Mhm.
email address. So yeah, reach out to me, connect with me there.
Awesome. Awesome. And the last question I have with all my guests, you have the opportunity to spend time with, learn from, have a conversation with, break bread with, whatever, three individuals, anyone in history, living or deceased. Who would those three be and why?
Albert Einstein,
That's a good one. I've never
uh,
heard that one. That's a first.
Galileo,
That's also a
and
first.
probably Socrates,
I think I've had Socrates before. I've had Socrates
or
before.
maybe Bill Gates. I wouldn't mind spending some time with Bill Gates.
Yeah. Those are all three really good ones that have interesting conversations. I think Albert Einstein would be fantastic.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good conversation.
Yeah. I mean, some of the portrayals of Einstein in movies, like if you've ever watched a movie called IQ,
Uh-huh. That's
uh,
yeah, yep.
Walter Matthau plays Albert Einstein. It gives you kind of a different perspective of the person. Now, granted, some of that is probably fictional,
Mhm.
all for the benefit of the movie. But in my gut, I feel like that's also part of what he would really be like. So I just feel like if I was to go have lunch with Albert Einstein, half of the conversation would be joking about the universe, and then the other half would be philosophical, conversations about where technology and AI is going.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be fascinating.
It would be fascinating. And also if we were able to catch him up with everything that's changed since he
Yeah.
passed away, that
Yeah.
it would be a mind-blowing conversation.
Well, there's something to change with your question. It's not just three people who you'd like to have lunch or break bread with, but it's if you could have lunch with anybody in the world of any time and they were brought up to speed with where we are today,
Yeah.
what that conversation would be like. And
That
I
would
think
be
it might change it.
that would definitely change the people what people would pick,
Yeah.
and it would drastically change the conversation.
Yeah. Exactly.
I like it. I like it. That's good. So, thank you so much, Chris, for coming on board and having a conversation, to sharing your wisdom. And for those of you listening, this was actually a fantastic. This is one of my favorite leadership conversations I've had in a long time, and because it's a lot of very applicable strategies when it comes to your culture, your climate, and your core values, and how to prepare for the future and the growth. And so, what I ask for all of you is to share this content with somebody else that can also get value from it, that can learn from it. and share with them Chris's website so they can go read his blog and then connect with them, listen to his podcast, and learn and grow more. We put this on. We do this for free. There's no marketing or messaging or anything like that. We only grow by word of mouth. So it takes you 60 seconds. Share, rate, review, subscribe. Put this content out there in order to help us. It means the world to Chris and I. So thank you so much. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you. Take care.